feel you all around. I think I'm out of answers, and I don't know your plans, but I will trust you now. Yeah, sometimes I don't know, and it's alright. I'm kinda lost in the low, but it's just life. Through the ebbs and the flows, look how far we've come. And I know everything will be just fine, 'cause I'm yours and I know you are all mine. Wanna stay 'cause your love is all I've found. Since I'm lost without you, 'cause your love is so true. This is where I belong. Oh, I am yours forever. You hold me together. You are where I belong. Hey, I belong.
You are all I'm needing.
Good evening. You have a whole variety of people that sing up here. So we miss Abby tremendously tonight. But this morning I woke up and in my quiet time, thinking about the Lord, this song came to me of "Oh, How He Loves You and Me." Okay? And I think sometimes we need to be reminded of God's love. I think we have so much that goes around us that it's hard. We just don't think of how much God loves us. And so I've asked Adam and Mr. Tom to put the words up on the screen. I'm not singing a solo. This requires you guys to sing with me. Okay? But just, if you think of John 3:16, what is it? For God so loved the world that he gave his only begotten Son, that whosoever believeth in him should not perish but have everlasting life. And so this is what it reminds me of with this song, okay?
Life
rolled back the water of the mighty Red Sea. And he said, I'll never leave you. Put your trust in me. How great is our God. How great is his name. How great is our God. Forever the same. He back the water of the mighty Red Sea. And he said, I'll never leave you. Put your trust in me. How great is our God. How great is his name. How great is our God. Forever the same. He gave us his Spirit, and now we can see. And he said, I'll never leave you. Put your trust in me. He gave us his Spirit, and now we can see. And he said, I'll never leave you. Put your trust in me. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Lift up your banner, let the anthems ring. Praise it to our King. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. He hath redeemed us by the blood of the Lamb. Set my spirit free. Great and mighty, the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty, the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Lift up your banner, let the anthem ring. Praise it to our King. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our great. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty is he. Lift up your banner, let the anthem ring. Praises to our King. Great and mighty is the Lord our God. Great and mighty.
got me? You got me. Thank you, Miguel, Melissa, and Miss Virginia for the music. Good evening, everybody. I hope so far you've had a good week. And if not, I hope it gets better. If you remember the last Wednesday I was here, we started through Ecclesiastes and we went through chapter 1. So tonight we'll go through chapter 2, verse by verse. That way we have a clear understanding. We already know the conclusion of Ecclesiastes because he tells us the conclusion of it in the very first verse of chapter 1. All is vanity, apart from God. Remember that this viewpoint in Ecclesiastes is from being separated from God, not with God, but from a humanistic standpoint, is from Solomon's perspective. We'll do a small recap of chapter 1 just to hit the high points to get us refreshed before we go into chapter 2. But I can tell you it's not much difference other than it's a second experiment. Remember, in Ecclesiastes, he has 5 experiments that he does to test these things, to see is there anything that can fulfill his life separated from God, which we all know the answer would be no. Experiment number 1 was, in chapter 1, was to find happiness and wisdom. And as we went through chapter 1, we saw all the highlights of when you get to the end, you're not going to find happiness in just wisdom. The second experiment was going to find happiness in pleasure and wine. And that's what we're going to do tonight, is to see, can you find pleasure or happiness in just pleasure? You know, we all know we'll have a pleasure moment, but it doesn't last long, does it? It just lasts for a moment, and then you're on to the next thing. What can I do to fulfill that pleasure? Whatever your pleasure may be. We all have different things. We can be happy after you get that new car, but once the new wears off of it, then you're on to something else. It gets old. Everything gets old pretty quick. Even your kids get old sometimes, especially when they're complaining all the time. So we'll be in chapter 2 in Ecclesiastes. What we'll do is we'll start off in verse 1, and then we'll just start trying to break it down. Be patient with me because, as you can see, I have a lot of notes. But it's because I don't want to misinterpret anything when we go through it verse by verse. And also remember, we're hitting this with a pair of binoculars, not a microscope. I am using the English Standard Version, so we may have different versions here while we're all here together, but basically when we get through the verse or the chapter, it's going to be the same meaning. Verse number 1, Solomon said, I said in my heart, come now, I will test you with pleasure. Enjoy yourself. We're going to stop right there. This is the same experiment that's being done in the United States of America today. And we're surrounded by it today. It's all about what can I get for me right now? What's going to pleasure me? What's going to make me happy? And it also spills over into believers as well. If we're not careful, some of that rubs off on us because we're around it day in, day out. And I hate to say it this way because we all have said this before, especially if you've had kids, or if you don't have kids and when you were growing up you heard this. You look around what you're hanging out with and that's what you're going to become. It doesn't take long. You don't see it at first. It creeps in a little bit at the time. But by the time you see it, I won't say it's too late, but it could be too late. Or you could get to a consequence that you can't overturn. But it does influence us. The pleasure that everybody goes after every day in our workplace, even in our homes sometimes, we're influenced by it to some degree. So we have to kind of be on guard and watch so that we don't fall into that trap as well. Because in the end, just like Solomon said in verse 1 of chapter 1, it's all vanity without God. It's all vanity. You know, I can remember when Becky and I first got married, we didn't have nothing. Zero. Zilcho. Just barely could get by. When I say barely could get by, I'm talking about barely could get by. And, 30 years later, we're much better off. But I can remember saying, if I just had this, I'd be happy. And then we would obtain that. And then I'd say, well, if I could just have this, I'd be happy. It don't matter how much you have. You'll never be happy unless you have that fulfillment with Christ. You can have as much as you want. You're still going to want more because it's human nature to want more. It's the sinful nature that we have in us. We're born that way. So when people say, I'd just be happy if I had this, they're lying to themselves. And a lot of times, if they would just listen to an older person or someone with a little wisdom, they wouldn't have to go down that path. But a lot of times we don't because we have to figure it out ourselves. If I listened to a lot of people when I was younger, man, I'd be much better off than where I'm at today. But I didn't because I was a hardhead and I thought I knew everything. We think sometimes that this is the way to live because of that influence that surrounds us every day. To run after that sensation of joy and happiness, we think only to find ourselves still empty after we obtain it. And let me interject this. If you're not doing with what you have today, if you're not using that today and being obedient with God, He's not going to give you any more anyway. So, I won't name names, but I've been around several people that I know really well, and they'll say something like, "Man, if I won the lottery, I'd give these people this, and I'd do this, and I'd do that." Well, do it now. If you're not doing with what you got now, you're not going to do it when you have a lot. If you're not doing it with a little, you're not going to do it with a lot. That's why you don't have it. The word that umbrellas chasing after pleasure is called hedonism. And hedonism is defined as the pursuit of pleasure or sensual self-indulgence. And so there's a life of meaning for pleasure and pleasure alone. So if you're hedonism, that's all they focus on is pleasure, period. Nothing else. Whatever pleasures me, that's what my goal is. That's what I'm aiming after. And that is what I think is going to make me happy. And that's a hedonism. So if you look at the end of verse 1, we know what the answer is. In chapter 2, at the end of verse 1, it says, "But behold, this also was vanity." A lot of times we'll sit here and we'll look at these verses and we'll say, this is common sense. And yet sometimes we don't practice it though. So it's always a good reminder to bring it to the forefront so that we can remember it and keep it in our minds. Because when we're being influenced on a daily basis through commercials and everything that's going on around you, it's very easily to fall into. Verse number 2. I said of laughter, it is mad, and of pleasure, what use is it? So he's saying, I have tested my life to see if pleasure and laughter would satisfy me. That's what he's saying. And as we all know, it will not. It will make us happy for a brief moment, but then it's gone. Verse number 3. I searched with my heart how to cheer my body with wine. Let me stop right there. I've seen several people be very cheerful when they got tipsy. We've all seen it. We've been around it. Even probably some of us have even done it at some point, either growing up or whatever, because we all tried stuff at some point in time. I'm very transparent, so it doesn't bother me to tell you whatever, because we all made of the same stuff. And we all know when you get tipsy, you're pretty cheerful most of the time. I've seen some people go the other way, where they're not a happy person when they get tipsy. But that's what he's saying. He's tried the wine as well. My heart still guided me with wisdom and how to lay hold on folly, till I might see what was good for the children of man to do under heaven during the few days of their life. So Solomon goes on with life to see if having fun and using wine, you can put beer in there, liquor, whatever you want, same difference, alcohol, because wine is supposed to gladden the heart. So I'm going to see if it does, if it works, if it satisfies, if it brings purpose and meaning to my life. But he didn't stop there. Look at verse 4. I made great works. I built houses and planted vineyards for myself. I made myself gardens and parks and planted them all kinds of fruit trees. We read about the incredible wealth that Solomon had in his lifetime and the massive number of wives that he had. And you don't have to flip there, I'll read it to you, but in 1 Kings chapter 11, verses 1 through 3, this is what it says. Now, King Solomon loved many foreign women. Besides Pharaoh's daughter, he married women from Moab, Eden, Sidon, and from among the Hittites. The Lord had clearly instructed the people of Israel, you must not marry them because they will turn your hearts to their gods. Yet Solomon insisted on loving them anyway. In verse 3 in 1 Kings chapter 11, he had 700 wives of royal birth and 300 concubines. And in fact, they did turn his heart away from the Lord. Now, keep that in mind, and let's jump back to chapter 2 and verse 6. I made myself pools from which to water the forest of growing trees. Verse 7, I bought male and female slaves and had slaves who were born in my house. I had also great possessions of herds and flocks, more than any who had been before me in Jerusalem. And verse 8, I also gathered for myself silver and gold and the treasure of kings and provinces. I got singers, both men and women, and many concubines, the delight of the sons of man. So Solomon has the resources to do whatever he wants, whenever he wants, and however he wants to do it. He can experiment. And like chapter 1, we talked briefly about, you can think of a rich person that can take their resources and do things that we couldn't do. And it can be a gain to them because they've got plenty of money. They don't care. But in the end, it's going to be all vanity. All of it's going to be vanity. Apart from God, all of it's vanity. This wasn't very wise. He took his wisdom and he said, I'm smarter than God. God gave him the incredible breath of wisdom, and he thought with his wisdom he could violate the wisdom of God's word. Solomon forgot there is someone smarter, and we all know who that is. It's our Lord Jesus Christ. He embarked on his experiment where he amassed 1,000 women. Now, this is going to be a little joke, but there is a little truth to it. I barely can keep up with my one wife. How does somebody keep up with 700? You would think he'd have a little bit more sense than that, wouldn't you? Especially when he was the most wisest person. But remember, he was experimenting apart from God. He did it to see if that would fulfill him. He didn't withhold any pleasure from his life because he was testing to see if there's any purpose in the pleasure. Problem was, in the midst of his experience, he got tangled and he was snared, which is the same thing that can happen to us. Have you ever said, well, I would never do that, and then one day you find yourself doing it, and then that phrase comes back in your head that you remember that you said, I would never do that. Be careful, because it can happen. We're all made of the same stuff. I'd like to tell a small story about an individual real quick before we move on. We're so quick to judge people. We're so quick to kick them when they're down. This man, I've been knowing since I was a teenager. This man was a federal judge. He would pay me to come over to his house and do work. I thought the world of him. He's very nice to me. He went to church. He did all the good things that you would think a good person would do. And I could even call him when I got into my 20s and 30s. I could call him. He was still a federal judge. And call his chambers, and the lady would answer and say, Judge so-and-so chambers. And I'd say, this is Rusty. Oh, Rusty, I'll get him just here in a minute. I thought I was somebody. I called a federal judge. I could get him on the telephone, just like that. So I thought I was somebody. And he'd answer right away. He'd come on there and talk to me. I got older and get to doing other things and kind of wasn't coming over to his house anymore. And then read in the paper where he hooks up with a prostitute, and he also had drug charges on him where he was buying the drugs for her. Now, this man has done good all the way up to his 60s, and then he makes this terrible mistake. And of course, he wasn't a federal judge at that moment anymore. His wife stayed with him, and they worked through it. And I went and saw him maybe a year or two after that had happened. I did not bring any of that up. I just gave him a hug, asked him if he needed anything, let me know, and also told him in a roundabout way, without bringing that up, do not let one mistake define you. And I left it at that, and he just gave me a nod, and that was it. We didn't speak about it. We didn't talk about it. But I'm saying that to say this. Before that, when all that was going on, I would be in a crowd of people somewhere, and they would say, "Can you believe what happened to Judge so-and-so? I can't believe he'd do something like that. I knew there wasn't something right about him. I would never do something crazy like that." Well, did I keep my mouth shut? No, I did not keep my mouth shut. Because there's one thing, if you don't know anything about me, there's one thing, I do not like bullies. And you can say whatever you want to me, I can get over it. But if I see you bullying somebody, I'll be the first to jump in there, or about someone else that I know. So I told them, I said, y'all better be careful what you say, because you're made of the same stuff, and you could be right where that man is too. And when I said that, everybody shut up and went on about their business, because they felt guilty about saying that. But the point is, he didn't see that coming. It just happened. He made a bad mistake. I get it. It's bad, but we shouldn't kick him while he's down. If anything, we should love on him and help him through it. Was it a sad day that happened? Absolutely. Is all anybody's going to remember about that man? They're just going to remember that one bad thing, not all the other good that he did up to that point. And that's the sad thing about our culture today. That's what people do. They're looking to get something on you. They're looking so that they can feel better about themselves. So that's what happened to Solomon. You know, he got entangled and snared, and the next thing you know, there he is. And he's the wisest man that walked. So if it can happen to the wisest man that walked, it can happen to us. Because I can tell you, I'm nowhere close to that. Anyway, I just wanted to interject that. So he said, I'm testing to see if there's any purpose in my pleasure. The problem was he got entangled, he was snared. And even with his great wisdom, he held fast to these women, to the point where he compromised God's word. He chose his wives over his love for God's word. And we're told here at the end that his wives turned his heart away. And the same thing can happen to us. And not just with that situation, just in things in general can turn our heart away. We can get too comfortable in life with our money, or whatever that thing may be, to turn our heart away. So we have to be careful, because we all can be snared. Excuse me. I got to remember where I was. I'm getting off because I start thinking about those stories and it gets me off. That was 9 through 10. So now we're going to verse 11. First, let me tell you this. He tells us here that his heart found pleasure. Don't tell anybody that sin is not enjoyable, because we all know it is enjoyable. For a time, it's enjoyable. But it's only enjoyable for a season. And that's what the Bible tells us. And if you've experienced it, which I'm sure all of us in here have, you do know it's only enjoyable for a season. And it's going to catch up to us eventually, whatever that indulgence into that sin is. He tells us here at verse 10 that my heart found pleasure, but that was my reward as well. So that pleasure that he found was his reward as well. And you know and I know that reward is a false reward. It's the example I like to use on that is when you do something for somebody, and instead of keeping it to yourself, you go tell everybody. Well, that's your reward. You should have kept it to yourself, because now you're taking away from God and you're trying to get that glory for yourself. Look what I did. How many times you hear people say, look, I'm just going to tell you this. Well, that means they still want to tell you. it'd just be better off if you're doing something with somebody, just keep it to yourself. Then you know your heart's right. And don't expect anything. Because if you're expecting something, then you're doing it for the wrong motive. So verse 11, that's where we're at now. Then I considered all that my hands had done, and the toil I had expended in doing it, and behold, all was vanity and a striving after the wind, and there was nothing to be gained under the sun. That's the key. There's nothing to be gained under the sun. Pleasure in itself is not satisfying enough. Remember, if you have an unbeliever that you know, that is their world. Their world is this world. And we have to keep that in mind. They have nothing else to live for but daily pleasure. And what can they get out of their daily routine? That's all they got. There's nothing more for them. They don't have the hope that we have. They don't have the eternal perspective that we have. They don't have anything to live for beyond this life. This is what dominates their every day, is the pleasure. Until they have a relationship with Christ, if they ever get to that point. But until they get to that point, we have to keep it in our mind to be patient with them, because that's their perspective. And at some point in time in our lives, it was our perspective as well before we came to know Christ. Verse 12. So I turned to consider wisdom and madness and folly. For what can the man do who comes after the king? Only what has already been done. Verse 13. Then I saw that there is more gain in wisdom than in folly, as there is more gain in light than in darkness. Solomon's making a conclusion here. He is simply saying there's more benefit in wisdom than there is in foolishness. And there is more benefit in light than there is in darkness. We're going to expand on that here in a little bit, but we're going to move now to verse 14. The wise person has his eyes in his head, but the fool walks in darkness. And yet I perceive that the same event happens to all of them. What event is that, you think? It's death. It's going to come to all of us. Whether you're a dummy, you're a smart person, it doesn't matter. Death is coming to all of us. And that's what he's saying. Doesn't matter if it's the fool that's walking in darkness or if it's the smart guy walking in light, the same event is coming to both of them. The man that's walking in the light can see where he's going. He has goals, achievements. The man that's walking in darkness is being foolish. He has no direction. He's stumbling around. However, both will die. That is life under the sun. You can't afford death. It's going to happen to all of us. That may have been a typo, afford death. How about avoid death? You can't avoid death. It's going to happen to all of us, no matter what's going on. But I can tell you, I would rather be the one walking in light, knowing where I'm going, than the one that's walking in darkness and being a fool and doesn't have Christ for his personal relationship in his heart with Christ. So, yeah, death's going to come to all of us. But it's only right here will that death happen to the believer. Our life's going to continue on with Christ. And the unbeliever, his life's going to continue on too, but it ain't going to be with Christ. We all know where he's going to be, or she. Verse 15. Then I said in my heart, what happens to the fool will happen to me also. Why then have I been so very wise? And I said in my heart that this also is vanity. And in other words, Solomon's saying, what is the point? Life under the sun, he has this gift from God, and he's looking at everything under the sun from man's perspective. What is the point? What is the point of having this gift of wisdom if I'm just going to die? If it's just for me, if it's just for this life, this current amount of time that I'm on this earth, what is the point? Because I'm going to die like the biggest fool on the planet. I may be the smartest man that ever lived, but I'm going to have the same end just like the foolish man is going to have. That's what Solomon is saying. Let's look at verse 16. For of the wise, as of the fool, there is no enduring remembrance, seeing that in the days to come all will have been long forgotten. How the wise dies just like the fool. In verse 17. So I hated life because what is done under the sun was grievous to me, for all is vanity and a striving after wind. So Solomon got to thinking about how he hated life, and he didn't want to live anymore. Have you ever wondered why people want to take their own life? It's because they have nothing to live for, they think. And I don't think I've never been in a situation where I thought, or so depressed where I wanted to take my life. But I can see where some people can get there of thinking that way because they have nothing else to live for. They think that everything is done with. There's nothing they can do, and they have nothing else to go after. But I'm thinking if you have a relationship with Christ, that you know that you have that hope, and you know you got a God that never will leave you no matter the situation that you're in. So you should never get to a point to where you think that if you truly have a close relationship with Christ, because he's not going to let you, he's not going to leave you no matter the problem that you're having in your life. They hate their life. I'm just going to die anyway. And if I'm hurting and I'm in pain now, why not just end the suffering that I'm going through? When I'm dead, I'm not going to have this suffering that I'm going through. I'm not going to have this pain anymore that I'm going through. So I should just get to it and be done with it. This life is just painful. It is just one long, painful experience. Now, from our perspective as believers, we have hope. We have eternal life. God said he works everything out to our good. That includes the painful experiences that we go through. Every one of those painful experiences and those challenging times, those very difficult circumstances, and we've all had them, God is using in your life to form Christ in you, to form the image of his Son in us. That is what God is doing when we're going through those painful experiences. We may not like it. I won't even say may. We don't like it when we're going through those experiences. But if you can remember going through those experiences, even if you're going through them now, and if you had some of those experiences before, when you got to the other end and you look back on it, you realized what the deal is now. You didn't when you was going through it. You wanted to strangle somebody or ask why. Why is this happening to me? I didn't do nothing. Why am I having to go through this? But when you get to the end, you look back and you see a purpose. And that's God working through us. He's molding us. He's shaping us. He's trying to get us where we want to go. He's putting us through the fire and getting us where we need to be. If we'll just listen and learn from it, it will get us where we need to be. It will make us stronger. I can remember little things that would really get me upset. Now, I don't even think about them when it happens. Every day in what I do, there's a problem. I'm talking about every day. And sometimes there's 6 or 7 of those problems. And when I say problems, I'm not talking about little problems. I'm talking about big problems. Somebody knocks a glass out of the tractor. They have a flat tire on the way. The supplier didn't show up with the material, so they can't work. I mean, it's just ongoing day after day after day. You don't think sometimes somebody would want to say, "Phew." I'm kidding. That's a joke. I wouldn't want to do that. But the point is, I don't even think about those things anymore because God's put me through to where when I get through the other side, it all works out in the end. By the time you get to the end of your day or the next day, it's fine. It all works out. By the time you get through all that mess, everything is okay. We just got to hold true and believe what He tells us. And sometimes we say we do that, but we don't do it. We have to put action to it. God will get us through anything, whatever that diversity is, and the reason He'll get us through anything is because we are His children. And anybody gets in a state where they think they need to take their own life, and you see that, you need to interject in them, and you need to slap some love on them, and you need to help them any which way you can and encourage them and let them know that there's a God out there that loves them and that will get them through whatever adversity that they're having at that time. We are told to take all those painful experiences and consider them all joy. Why? Because we are being trained to be more Christ-like. Wow. So now we finally got to a biblical perspective out of all this depression that we just heard from Solomon. He says, I hate my life. What is the pain for? There's no purpose. There's no redeeming value. Oh, yes, there is, and it's through Christ. And that is the value. Christ is forming us, and we will have an eternal benefit. Now we'll look at verse 18. I hated all my toil in which I toil under the sun, seeing that I must leave it to man who will come after me. Verse 19, and who knows whether he will be wise or a fool? Yet he will be a master of all for which I toiled and used my wisdom under the sun. This also is vanity. So I turned about and I gave my heart up to despair over all the toil of my labors under the sun. Verse 21, because sometimes a person who has toiled with wisdom and knowledge and skill must leave everything to be enjoyed by someone who did not toil for it. Let's stop there for a minute. You ever seen a guy that come from nowhere? I mean, didn't have nothing growing up, worked hard, got somewhere, and his kids come along, take over the company, and shortly after that, the company goes gone, out, kaput. It's because they didn't have to work for it. And that's what Solomon is saying right here. He said, I'm doing all this work. I got all these riches. And whoever comes after me could be an idiot. And they're going to take what I have worked hard for and just do away with it. That's what he's saying in these verses that we just read. But you can see it in real life because I've seen it many times. The kids that didn't have to work for it do not have the same perspective as someone that had to work for it, that didn't have anything and built it into something. It came easy to the kids. It didn't come easy to the parents or the one before the kid, whichever way you want to look at it. And the kids also sometimes will have that cocky air about them. And so what happens to the employees? They're going to leave. They're going to hit the road. And the kids did not have to work for it, so it came easy to them, so it ain't no big deal if it leaves because they've got it already because the one that came before them's already gave it to them. That's what Solomon is saying in this passage. And we've seen it. And it happens all the time. And it's going to continue to happen. Wait a minute. I'm going to tell you a story. Just popped in my head. I remember a time. So Daddy owned a body shop. It was here in Newnan. It's called Newnan Collision Center. And I was probably 14 years old. And, you know, he'd go in and say, hey, do this, you do that, you do this. I thought I could do the same thing because he's my dad, you know. So I got cocky. Well, Daddy snatched me up real quick and let me know I couldn't do that. And I also got a whipping. So I learned real quick, I can't be like my dad. My dad's the one who started the business in the body shop realm of what he did. And that's his business. That's what he does. That's what he worked hard for. And I wasn't going to come in there and talk to people like he does because I'm a 14-year-old kid. But I saw him do it, so I thought it was okay for me to do it as well. But he corrected me real quick. Yeah, if you want something in life, you go get it. You go work for it. You work hard after it. And you be respectful with people because these people are working too. I said, yes, sir. Because after you get whooped a couple of times after smarting off, you learn real quick, I better do what he says. Right. And these kids today that don't get whippings, they ain't going to make it. You got to get whipped. You got to get whipped. If you do something wrong and there's consequences growing up, you know, if you don't respect it when you're a kid, you're not going to respect it when you're an adult. I'll quit there. But we do know there's a verse in the Bible that says, spare the rod, spoil the child. Daddy didn't even read the Bible, but he knew to do that. All right. So, verses 18. Did we read verse 18 already? Okay, we went to 18 through 21. So he's admitting that he gave his heart up to despair. Have you ever been there before? You gotten so low that you despaired life. He had done all of these things through his work, his gardens, his buildings, his wealth. Solomon built his own palace. He built up whole cities with his wealth. Then he started thinking about the guy who's coming into all this behind him after I'm gone, and he said, you know, he can be a total idiot. And, you know, what kind of king who comes after, what kind of king who came after him? Well, the king who came after him was his own son, and he had a good reason to worry because his son split the kingdom was the very first thing he did. So naturally, that is what happened. The kid come along after him, became king, and screwed everything up compared to what Solomon had laid out. His name was Rehoboam. So Rehoboam was not the sharpest knife in the drawer or not the sharpest tool in the shed. The first thing he did was split the kingdom in half. As Solomon thought about what could happen, he was at the place where he despaired over the whole thing. You know, he worried himself to death thinking about it. I worked hard for all these things. I applied my wisdom for all that I have created. And the guy who comes after me is just going to fritter it all away. And that's exactly what happened. What time is it? 7? Oh, do y'all want me to stop or you want me to finish the chapter? Finish it? Okay. We have just to verse 26, I think. Yes, verse 26, and we'll be done. So, have you ever laid awake at night thinking about what you're doing? Like, your brain will not shut off. You wished you had a switch that you could just cut it off. That's what Solomon was doing. He was despairing over these things, and his brain wouldn't shut off. Verse 24. There's nothing better for a person than he should eat, drink, and find enjoyment in his toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. Verse 25, for apart from him, who can eat or who can have enjoyment? This is the first time Solomon brings God into consideration or into the equation. Then he ends with his observation in verse 26. For to the one who pleases him, God has given wisdom and knowledge and joy. But to the sinner, he has given the business of gathering and collecting, all to give to one who pleases God. This also is vanity and a striving after the wind. So his final observation of this chapter is God seems to give wisdom, knowledge, and joy to the one who pleases him. But the one who rejects God's purpose for his life, he gives the burden of the same work, only then to give all of that over to the one who comes after him. Solomon says at the end of verse 26, this also is vanity and striving after the wind, which we also know is dog chasing after its tail. Even though Solomon acknowledges God, he is still basing his conclusions apart from God. Do you know that people who do not accept the Lord, that are not believers, many times they will acknowledge God? You've been around them. They'll talk about God, but they truly don't know him. Or maybe you've heard this before, the man upstairs. But they truly don't have a relationship with him. He is not happy with me today. Have you heard that before? The man upstairs or the same other goofy reference that you can think of. We've heard a lot of references where people reference God, but they really don't know him. Doesn't mean they love him. Doesn't mean they read his word or follow him or serve him. It doesn't mean they are living their life from a completely human, naturalistic perspective. That is what Solomon is doing here at the end of chapter 2. He recognizes God, but then when he talks about how God operates in the realm of man, he calls it vanity or emptiness or striving after the wind. Now, if that don't leave you all perked up by the time we get to the end of chapter 2, I don't know what would. So we're going to end on a good note instead of all this gloom and doom and vanity that he talks about, Solomon talks about. But let me say, this is a good reminder of how the unbeliever thinks. We just forget sometimes how they think, and we have to be patient with them. You know, they think it's all for now. It's for the moment. You know, you only get one life to live. You better live it. Live it up. Get all you can get out of it. That's how most people view it. Even some unbelievers you will hear say that at times. Did I say unbelievers? Even some believers you will hear say that sometimes. But you got to remember, the unbelievers can't live for someone that they don't know. And that's where we come in. We're the one that's got to plant that seed and let them know that there is one out there. Even if we're not watering it or harvesting it, we can plant it. We can interject something along the way. We must be patient with them and hope one day they'll come to know Christ so that they can experience the same peace, and I emphasize real joy and life that does not stop for the believer. And it doesn't stop for us. If you truly have a relationship with Christ, you have a peace that passes all understanding. You have a joy that also no one can know. I can sit in the swing and be just as content and happy sitting right there listening to the birds sing and it's all quiet than if you were to give me a brand new car. And I can honestly say that. Materialism is not something that affects me. And the reason I think that is because of the peace and joy that he instills in us. All right, I'm going to end with this. There was a speaker one night. There was about 200 people in the crowd. He took a $100 bill, said, would anybody want this $100 bill? Of course, all 200 people raised their hand. So then he takes the $100 bill, he wads it up. He says, y'all still want the $100 bill? All 200 raises their hand. So then he takes the $100 bill, it's all wadded up, he throws it down, he stomps on it, mashes his foot all around, kicks it around, gets it up off the ground, raises it up. Anybody still want this $100 bill? Everybody raises their hand. So here's the lesson out of that. No matter what I did to the money, you still wanted it because it did not decrease in value. It's still worth $100. And many times in our lives, we go through things that wrinkle us up. We go through things that we get stepped on and crumbled up. We make bad decisions, or we deal with poor circumstances, and we feel worthless. But no matter what's happened or what will happen, we, you, everyone else will never lose value. God created us. He created us in His image. We all have value of some kind. We're not a mistake. People are not a mistake. Just some will make the wrong decision. So when someone does make the wrong decision, just like we see Solomon, instead of judging him, let's lift them up. Let's help them. Yes, there's going to be circumstances to that wrong decision, but let's let them know they still have value, because nothing's worse than a broken spirit, and that's where we should come in. If we have a relationship with Christ, we should help mend that broken spirit. You see somebody down, say a kind word, lift them up, love on them a little bit. That's what I got for this evening. Next Wednesday, Vacation Bible School, sometime we won't be up here, so we won't be having church next Wednesday. It'll be after Vacation Bible School. So let's end in prayer. Lord, we thank you for another day of life, and thank you for your many blessings. We thank you for watching over us, keeping us safe. Help us to be mindful of the world. Help us to be mindful of people. Help us to be mindful and encouraging of others, and to help not to be so judgmental. We thank you for your love. We thank you for your grace, and all these things we ask.